Hey y'all, I want to take a minute, um, probably a few long minutes, and I want to talk with you about COVID. And um, praise God, I hope that you don't go through what I have been through or worse. Um, Yesterday is going to make 6 weeks since I first started showing signs of COVID. And as of right now, I'm still on supplemental oxygen. In fact, I was um, breathing off of that thing not 3 minutes ago. That machine's in my living room in yonder. But I wanted to speak with you guys because I'm seeing so many uh, people that have opinions. And I mean, look, I know everybody is a doctor or infectious disease specialist, um, but seriously, if you're not one of those, or if you have not had both variants of, the original COVID and then the Delta variant, um, uh, I think that you're not qualified to, uh, to shame other people and what they should and should not do. Uh, and that's exactly what it is people are shaming other people, um, and and you're making people feel uh, a certain way that maybe they won't get vaccinated because there's some kind of shame or stigma attached to it. And I've seen it all. I've seen people, you know, say that it's the mark of the beast and that it's this and it's that. Um, and I've seen my one of my least favorites is the meme that says you put your faith in, with a picture of a needle or a vaccination, and I'll put my faith in, and then they'll put a picture of the Bible. And that is one of the oldest things in the book. It's, the holier than thou syndrome. And let me tell you something, as a Christian and as a person of tremendous faith, I'm offended by that. Uh, it's us and our behavior as ambassadors of God that push people the furthest away from God. Um, Look, if you go out and do some evangelizing, which I hope you will, um, it's not going to take you very long to run into somebody who's going to say, um, I was part of whatever church, and the people that went to that church, I knew how they acted during the week when they weren't at church, and I just didn't have the stomach for it. That they were the hypocrisy of it and everything. So I quit going, and we're doing the same thing now. Um, we're scaring people away from making decisions about their health. And let me tell you about my experience with COVID. I got the original COVID and was pretty sick for a couple of weeks, and then was really exhausted for a very long time after that. But I made it through, and um, months went by and ticked by, and I began to get more and more complacent, and eventually went somewhere and unvaccinated, and came into contact with somebody who had the disease, the Delta variant, which is way more contagious than the original one, and I brought that home to my house, and I gave it to my two little girls and to my wife, My wife barely skated through that thing. And matter of fact, my wife went outside. She was, everybody had COVID at that point, and we didn't know that she had gone outside, and she passed out, 100 degrees outside, and she passed out on the ground and woke up, praise God, and somehow made it back inside. Nobody ever knew anything had happened to her. She's very lucky that she survived it. And again, praise God, she's on the mend now. My experience was way worse than everybody here. I was in the hospital twice, one time for a week, and literally on death's doorstep. I mean, I didn't think I was going to make it. The doctors refused to give me a prognosis on it. They didn't think I was going to make it. And skated through that thing by the skin of my teeth. Like I said, yesterday makes 6 weeks, and I'm still on supplemental oxygen. I'm still taking over 20 pills a day, if you include the vitamins on it, and and I've still got pneumonia. I had respiratory failure, and by the time I got to the hospital, I had respiratory failure and very bad COVID pneumonia. And like I said, I really barely survived it. Everybody's an expert these days. Everybody's sharing information and misinformation. And it's very difficult to get any type of facts on the disease. But I'm going to tell you about what my experience has been. I can tell you that when I went to the hospital, there wasn't anywhere for me to go. So I stayed right in that little room where they take your blood pressure and stuff for 6 or 8 hours until they had a bed ready for me, because they didn't have any beds. I can tell you that in the emergency section of the hospital, which is an entire floor, you couldn't put another person, I don't think. There were people in the hallways on beds. There were people doubled up in, little rooms, and every corner. We couldn't hardly get down the hallway, and everybody had that COVID cough. And it was like something that you would see in a movie. It was one of the scariest things I've ever seen. And then they admitted me, and I stayed there for a week. And I didn't think I was ever going to see the faces of my children again. I didn't think I'd ever see my wife or my mom and daddy again, or anybody, my friends, because they're not letting visitors into the COVID wards of these hospitals. And it's not just that hospital. I had 2 very close friends, or good friends, and one of them I've known since 30 years. I've known him, and both of these other guys were in different hospitals with COVID pneumonia, and they were seeing the same thing. Just bodies in there, not bodies, but people in there stacked up to capacity with that COVID cough, and very serious issues related to the COVID. But people, when you share something on Facebook, and again, I know everybody is a doctor and infectious disease expert, but when you share something on Facebook, be considerate of the fact that at this point, most of us know people in the hospital or who have died of COVID, and or are suffering the effects at this point, and be mindful of their feelings. Be mindful when you're shaming people about getting a vaccine. People are dying because they're making medical decisions, and you are not qualified. With all due respect, you are not qualified to give your opinion to somebody else unless you are a doctor, unless you are an infectious diseases expert, or unless you've gone through both, you know, the original COVID and this newer, stronger, more contagious version of it, the Delta variant. And, you know, I'm the most politically conservative person you're ever going to meet. And I thought that, you know, and I think there's some of this going on that, you know, the left is taking advantage of this situation. And I thought that a lot of it was scare tactics and a power grab by the left and everything. But as for me, after seeing what I've seen, and going through and witnessing the things that I have, I'm getting vaccinated. My family's getting vaccinated. You know, until you think that you have given your children a disease that could kill them, or your wife a disease that could cost her life, I think that, you know, having gone through that, I've certainly done a, you know, 180 degree turn on my thoughts on the vaccination and everything. A lot of people say, well, you don't know what's in it. And look, you've been getting vaccinated your whole life and you don't know what's in any of them. Do you know what was in your tetanus shot? Do you know what was in your TB vaccination? How about the measles vaccinations and stuff that you had as a child, or polio, or who knows what? You don't know what was in any of them. But because those vaccinations were available, most of those diseases have been, you know, really vaccinated into obscurity, and that's a fact. You know, I'm not trying to scold anybody, but I am trying to say that, you know, I have seen and experienced this disease in a way that is eye-opening, to say the least. And you know, if one of my children had died from this thing because of me being complacent, or holier than thou, or that I was up on a pedestal and thought I knew everything, or because of my political beliefs or religious beliefs or who knows what, I think, you know, and I think God gives us free choice, and I think that God puts it in scientists and doctors' hearts to come up with vaccinations to protect us. That's just what I believe. And if that don't line up with what you believe, I'm sorry. You know, that's what I think. But be mindful that people have loved ones that are dying. People are reading your comments on Facebook and social media, and they're ashamed to go get vaccinated because of the perception that their faith isn't as strong as the next person's, or who knows what. That's what you guys are doing. So if you are a legitimate expert, more power to you. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the disease and stuff. But if you're not, then be careful about what you say, who you say it to, and how it affects other people. Because this is a real disease. I don't support mandates that the government says you have to get vaccinated. No, but I support common sense, free choice that God gives us, and educating ourselves. And I don't think anything less of people who have decided not to get vaccinated. that's their personal choice. That was my personal choice until I came home and infected my family with it. I just think that all of you, you may not like the president. I don't. You may not like the leadership in Washington. I certainly don't. You may not like their decisions. I don't. But don't politicize this disease in such a way that it kills you or kills your family. Don't do that. Educate yourself. I can tell you that during the 2 trips to the hospital and the over a week in total that I spent in the hospital over the course of 2 different stays there, I can tell you that all of the doctors, all of the nurses, and I met with a bunch of them each and every day, were saying that the people like me who were very close to death or very, very sick at the very least and dying were not people who had been vaccinated. The vast majority, they just weren't seeing vaccinated patients, on the verge of death and dying. They just weren't seeing it. Everybody that like me that was being admitted or putting on ventilators or who knows what, I went in there with respiratory failure and COVID pneumonia the second time, and people like that had not been vaccinated. Most of the people who are getting vaccinated, and say what you want about it, but most of the people say, well, if you get the disease, then it's not a real vaccine. You say whatever you want about it, but be careful though, because the people who are getting vaccinated are surviving, and when they're getting sick, it's not to the degree that I've been sick, and most of those people are not dying from it. And yeah, you can find people that have, and of course, or had complications as a result of it. But the vast majority of people, according to the nurses and doctors who are experts, the ones who have been treating me for over 6 weeks now, they are experts and they do know what they're talking about. Be careful about how you treat yourself. I know there's a lot of, different things that people are trying, and ivermectin and who knows what. I've chosen to stick with what the doctors are saying to do, and I've been pretty much on the mend from this thing. I'm certainly head and shoulders better than I was even just last week. So I hope that will continue to happen, and I'll make a strong and good recovery from this thing. But y'all, just stop shaming people, stop humiliating people, stop sharing these clever and witty sounding memes that on social media that may steer people away from doing what's best and safest for their health or the health of their families, because you're not an expert on this disease. So you don't have to believe what I'm believing or what I'm saying, but for crying out loud, just educate yourself, and don't get your information from Fox News or CNN. Do your own research. Make phone calls to your own doctors, to your primary care physician. Ask them what their advice is. Ask them the truth about the vaccines. But anyway, I appreciate you watching this long-winded video, and God bless y'all. Bye-bye.